If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintze.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintze. Thank you for joining. Today, our guest is Joe LaDuke. Joe is the Vice President of Coaching and Consulting Services at Dion Leadership. I'm excited to have Joe on today because he's an expert in leadership agility. We have a lot to discuss. But first, Joe, would you mind sharing with us your journey and how you became interested in this topic of leadership agility?
Arnette, I appreciate you having me on today. So first and foremost, just want to say thank you for this opportunity to talk about leadership agility. And in service to your question, I think I came in through a back door. I have been training in martial arts for over 20 years. And early on in my training, there was a concept that I was introduced to called Rinkyo-hen. I believe that was the Japanese term for it, which equated to adaptability. And it was this idea of, okay, we can't control everything that takes place in the environment around us, but we can focus on what lies within our agency, our capacity for choice, and move the needle from there. So that's where I really kind of first, I guess, took hold of this concept of what it means to adapt, be flexible, be nimble, and agile, regardless of the environment that we inhabit, whether it's a personal space or professional space.
Yeah, that's great. So if you are pressed to give a definition of leadership agility and why it's crucial in today's rapidly changing business landscape, what would that be?
I would define leadership agility as the ability to act, to make decisions that move the business forward in the face of uncertainty and change. I think it includes words I've already mentioned, a skill set such as flexibility, adaptability, mindfulness, and the ability to act even with incomplete information as well.
Yeah, I really think that's so critical for leaders to be able to be adaptable, flexible. So if you were to point out, we have some wonderful business leaders and, in America, corporations. And if you were to look at these organizations and leaders, who would you point to of ones that maybe show that top-notch leadership agility?
Yeah, I had an inkling that this kind of question would come up, and I did think about this, and I keep coming back to our CEO at Dion Leadership, Steve Dion. Dion Leadership was formed in November of 2019. 10 weeks later, our world changed dramatically. By March of 2020, the world was a different place, which, as we already know, saw tremendous impacts on the workforce. As a company, we had to decide how are we going to respond to all of the changes that are taking place. That's when we were able to move, all of our course content from being in person to virtual or blended. That's when we decided to create an LMS of our own to work with organizations. So I think of our leader, Steve, and his ability to adapt to changes in the environment that many of which were outside of his control, but said, oh, hey, what are we going to do about this? What does lie within our control so we can still support and serve our clients in the best way possible?
Yep. So as you look at, organizations and cultures in these organizations, what are the characteristics of traditional and agile leaders in the cultures they represent?
So words that come to mind when I think of a traditional structure, static, tend to be siloed, likely hierarchical, maybe a little slower to make decisions, slower moving. The kind of sense of authority tends to move linearly, tends to be shareholder centric. Whereas if we're talking more agile culture, adaptability is championed, one's ability to reconfigure. The leadership structure may be more network-based or matrixed. Learning tends to be more rapid in some scenarios, as well as decision-making. There's more delegation. People are operating more from a sense of their own authority and empowerment. There's a healthy relationship with technology. And rather than it being so shareholder-centric, I would say that it's more people-centric.
Yeah. So, business today is fast-paced. We've got many fluid environments that are coming and going. How would an agile leader approach decision-making in an environment like that, as compared to maybe, a traditional leader?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna likely reference the model in a little bit, but just to kind of even give an introduction to it, they're gonna move through the model. They're gonna lean into their self-awareness. And what I mean by that is they're gonna pay close attention to their values, their beliefs, the stories they're telling themselves, their motivators and stressors, their preferences, their natural tendencies. They're going to pay close attention to what their sense of purpose is. Okay, so that's almost like the first part right there. And then they're going to think about how all of these align with that of their organizations and that of their role and that of their business need. So what I'm really talking about is that they closely examine then the mindset in which they engage the decision they are faced with. Once more, what is the story they're telling them about this decision themselves? And whatever decision they make, they choose with intention, with deliberation. They're operating more from a place of alignment, but they're also operating more from a place of curiosity, possibility, exploration. They even may have a healthier relationship with risk. Whereas if we're talking about a more traditional style of leadership, what we've seen is that maybe not in every case, but commonly that leader may be concerned with or about upholding the status quo, just for the sake of status quo. And they may be kind of held back by any, kind of limited thinking or deficit thinking, or at times legacy thinking.
Yeah.
So I would add this too, Arnette. I would ask that in all of this, particularly operating from that sense of purpose and alignment, they're more grounded. They're more confident, so that even if the atmosphere around them is volatile, even if there is tumult, there's a sense of security and knowing in themselves and an alignment with that of their role, the need of the organization. So there's a decisiveness in moving forward.
Yeah, I totally like that kind of characteristic you provided there, because having a grounded leader in the purpose of the company can make a total difference in how the rest of the organization responds. So
we've certainly seen it the other way. When the leader's hair is on fire and they're acting accordingly, we can see the ripple effect and the damage that can do in a very short amount of time as well.
Yeah. So how do you see technology impacting leadership agility today?
I think there's a marriage there, Arnette. I think it's a really interesting marriage. I think it goes without saying that technology certainly speeds up and changes most things. I think that ship has been at sail for a very long time. Yeah. I think we see that now with all of the conversation around AI, for example. I think that's a low-hanging fruit example. But where I think the marriage is so crucial is that without leadership agility, technology isn't fully leveraged. So if you want to lean into AI, as our example, leaders need to be more agile. They need to be able to create really what I might describe as safety for themselves and for others to try new and uncharted waters. Because technology is certainly taking us to those places.
So I know you and your team, as you were contemplating, coming up with a model of agile leadership, you did some research. And what did you do and what did it show?
Yeah. What I love about the research end of this is it's really kind of a combination of what I would describe as both the practical or pragmatic and the academic. So, in service to the practical side, we canvassed our clients. We really mined for data and working with them because we were seeing thematically pop up at a relatively consistent pace this kind of topic of, even if they weren't calling it agility, like, oh man, change is happening. It's happening so rapidly. We're really having a hard time keeping all hands on deck and just staying focused and staying in tune and on time. So part of it came with working intimately and closely with our clients to really kind of help them identify what their unique needs were in those rapidly changing environments, and then kind of denote the patterns and themes that were surfacing from that. And then there was also the academic side. So, we pulled from, one work that comes to mind is Bill Joyner and Stephen Joseph's Leadership Agility. I think it's the 5 levels of mastery. We looked to a lot of thought leadership, HBR articles, things of that nature. So it was this delicious fusion of both real world application that we were working with our clients with currently, and then looking to, the research as well to kind of combine what we think is a really effective, to make for what we think is a really effective model.
Yeah. So let's drill into the model. What can you tell us about the model and how does it work?
So the first part I already spoke to. So, I'll be brief in kind of summarizing that again, but it's once more operating from a more grounded place. And what do I mean by that? Knowing one's sense of purpose, having a strong relationship with your own value system, knowing your natural tendencies, your preferences, your motivators, your stressors, but then two, being fully aware of the value system of your team, of your organization, and being able to combine all of this and to really being clear on how well it aligns with your role and that of the business need. And once more, just being steeped in that. So when you go to make a decision, you're operating from a more secure and stable place. Because if we're talking about agility, we're talking about operating amongst change. Change is going around you. Your intention is to operate from a stable and secure place. So then we move into, okay, we're operating from that stable, secure place. A situation unfolds. We are confronted with a decision to make. This allows us the opportunity to then check our mindset. I cannot stress to you enough today, if there's one word I would ask anyone who is listening to really kind of pull from this, is mindset. Is to really pay attention to the mindset that you're endorsing as you engage with the decision. Whether it's in a situation that's unfolding, a relationship that you're in, right? What is the mindset that I am endorsing as I navigate through this terrain? What am I telling myself? Okay. And then choosing accordingly, but also paying attention to that as I make that decision. I'm doing so. Here's another word I'll throw out there, from a place of what I would call equanimity. And once more, it's another word for some of what we've already been talking about. A sense of being grounded, calmness, a composure, an evenness of temper, because once more, that's what you control. And then once the outcome of the situation or decision takes place, here's really the last step that is just as crucial as any of the others. And that's the reflection piece. Is that once the decision is made and the outcome takes place, we allocate time to reflect on what happened. It sounds seemingly simple, but I can tell you from experience, it's often overlooked. And it's crucial because examining those takeaways and making this part of our practice is crucial to making it sticky. Our brain needs that. Even if we were to get into the topic of neuroplasticity, which I think we can say for another day, but that repetition, that continued intentional practice and reflection on practice is imperative to making it more reflexive, making it stick.
So as I heard you there, say a team is moving to your model, it does require a mindset shift maybe, or skills shifting. Is that right?
Without question. Yeah. And I emphatically, as you probably can tell already, really am leaning into the mindset piece, because if we focus on skill set by itself, if we focus solely on behavior, things tend to have a shorter shelf life. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's crucial that once more we think about the way we're thinking about the decision before we make the decision. And without that kind of introspection, without that kind of examination, what we risk, Arnette, is we risk then only reacting. We may focus solely on the limited objective in front of us, or dare I even say kind of a knee-jerk reaction. So now we're shooting from the hip rather than making a deliberate choice.
Yep. So I want to explore the area of emotional intelligence, because we all have it at different levels. And how does this come into play in maintaining, in even developing your leadership agility model?
Yeah, I'm actually very thankful that you brought that up. I think it's an integral element to this equation. When we talk about it, I would answer it this way. It's imperative in allowing emotions to exist and to not weaponize them. That an emotion is not good, it's not bad. One can sit with them, one can process them. They can recognize then too, especially from a leadership vantage point, the need for others to do so. So paying attention to the emotional element of the equation, and that it's okay. As the leader, or if I'm supporting, let's say, a direct report, it's okay to get curious about emotions. Maybe even ask what they're trying to tell us. But going back to that word of equanimity, this process is important if we are going to operate from a more stable, grounded, and secure place, to be mindful that, once more, emotions are a part of this equation, especially if we're looking to thrive in an ever-changing, tumultuous environment.
Yeah. So I have to feel that leaders might commonly come to challenges as they strive to become more agile. How do they overcome that? What advice do you have to a leader that if they're confronted with a challenge, how do they set those aside and overcome those?
Yeah. And I think I'm going to split your question in half, if you'll allow me, Arnette. I think, commonly what we see in terms of challenges, even fear, rigidity, limited thinking, deficit thinking, legacy thinking, a desire to stay in a status quo, because that's often what our brain knows, and that's what it likes in service to our safety. Overcoming comes back to that mindset piece that we just spoke about a moment ago. Overcoming involves choosing to tell a different story, being mindful, intentional about the perspectives that we're operating from, making sure that the aforementioned perspective is aligned with our value system, our sense of purpose, with that of our role, with that of the need, with that of the org. But then too, what I would also add in terms of overcoming those challenges is operating more from a place of curiosity, a place of possibility, and even revisiting one's relationship with mistake making and failure, so that we're not weaponizing learning. That if we are taking a more exploratory mindset, especially if an environment is tumultuous and we allow ourselves the permission to try new things, that we don't bludgeon the learning that takes place. But this is in service to healthy growth, development, and adaptation.
That's fabulous. Well, Joe, I think we could spend all afternoon talking about this, because I actually have a shared belief and passion in this topic, and it's been great having you on today. Before we sign off, though, I'd like to ask you a question that I ask every guest here. which is if S2 Verify were to conduct a background investigation on you, would there be any surprises?
Surprises. I share. I'm a dual citizen, Arnette.
All right.
First generation Maltese American. My mother is from the country of Malta, island archipelago in Mediterranean.
That's fabulous.
They would likely find that I'm a dual citizen.
Oh, that's a good thing to find then. So, look, I really appreciate your time today, Joe. I'd love to have you back and continue this conversation. How can our audience stay connected with you and learn more about this topic?
Couple ways. Feel free to reach out to my email, joe.laduke, LADUKE @dionleadership.com, or visit our website at dionleadership.com. That Dion is spelled DION, and you could also look us up on LinkedIn too.
Well, that's fabulous. So before we sign off, I'd like to have a minute with my partners, Bill and Jim at S2 Verify. You know, our industry has just a lot of various oversight, whether it's FCRA, state oversight, EEOC. I think one of the topics that our clients are really interested in hearing about has to do with a topic called ban the box. So, Jim, if you don't mind, can you frame that discussion up and tell us what clients need to be aware of in this topic?
Glad to, Arnette, and great question. I think one of the things that causes confusions for clients is they perceive this to be new, and it actually started in 1998 in the state of Hawaii. So it's been around a while now. As of late, it's gotten significantly more play, significantly more attention. But let's talk about what it is. It's kind of an American campaign by advocates for ex-offenders, as in EX offenders, aimed at removing the legitimate or the literal box with a check mark that the candidate or applicant was forced to initiate, indicating that they had a former or prior criminal record, aka the name check the box. And there was a belief there that employers were never running backgrounds if someone checked the box. So if you said I had a previous criminal record, the employer went, okay, we'll be in touch, and never ran a background. So the fundamental frame of ban the box was dealing with, you cannot put that little square on the actual application for employment, but you could run a background after you made a conditional offer of employment to the candidate. And so that's been in play now for, goodness gracious, maybe 2019, when the federal law was enacted that states began to follow, from a discipline standpoint of removing that box from applications. It is not a wholesale, every state does it, but it's becoming more and more prevalent in the US. And the keynote for our clients is to remember that it doesn't replace your ability to run a background. It simply delays it until you make a legitimate offer of employment.
And if my appreciation of ban the box is correct, it's been put in place to get three primary benefits, which is maybe increasing employment opportunities for those that might have criminal records. That's one, because, you know, in our society, I know we do support opportunities for individuals that have criminal convictions. We just need to make sure we get, you know, as an employer, you want to make sure you put that person in the right job. So it's designed to afford that increased likelihood of employment. It's also designed to provide you a more diverse workforce, I think is another goal. And it has shown to, in fact, help reduce recidivism rates. Any thoughts on that topic, Jim?
Yes, Arnette. In fact, one of the things that's happened, and that I'm sure employers are well aware of this, but now there's a belief that because it's not a wholesale acceptance of ban the box, but it's also now causing employers and, of course, advocate groups to look deeper into some of these issues. It was intended exactly as you clearly communicated, to afford an opportunity to an ex-offender who is being eliminated by a checkbox rather than an assessment of what the actual crime was. Now there's a belief that categorically we're using statistical discrimination in advance of and in background, simply using statistical numbers on any group that depict a historical criminal activity to go around the ban the box. So now that's kind of the next battle for employers, but its ultimate intent, really, as you described, was simply to put people to work, particularly individuals who might have had a low-level crime, because the box was, as we all know, the checkbox was indiscriminate, right? You could have had a first-degree felony, you could have had a fourth-degree misdemeanor. But if the box got checked, statistically, then you were being eliminated before a background. So yes, it's in its intent, it was put forward to allow a greater employment opportunity to those who have a prior record.
And so you just touched on, I think, the heart of the issue, which is asking an applicant, they had a little box that they would check off. And that box was, do you have any prior convictions? And that was the box that we're talking about banning, correct?
That is correct.
Yep,
That's
correct. Bill, Jim mentioned a topic that I think our audience could benefit from, and it relates to the timing of when backgrounds should start. So it's around a conditional offer. So the employee has to be offered a conditional position subject to the successful completion of a background screening. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Arnette, that, in the past, they would run the background check before they made an offer, but a lot of companies have realized you got to make a conditional offer, and the EOC has really enforced this. You got to make a conditional offer prior to running a background check. And so in the process, with a lot of ATS, applicant tracking systems, they track that, and then they'll actually order the background after they make the conditional offer via the applicant tracking system, or they could do it internally.
So what does the employer put themselves at risk for if they don't have that conditional offer extended? If they just, as a routine matter, just start screening individuals before they offer a position?
Well, the first thing they need to do is make sure they have a consent from the applicant. And they got to do that within the hiring process. So they have to make a conditional offer to get them to sign a consent. The litigation, so they're subject to litigation from a lot of these class attorneys if they don't make a conditional offer and then do the background check. And they're subject to the EOC coming in and fining them in addition to the litigation of the attorneys. So.
For our audience, please tune in next week when we continue our exploration of topics critical to success in HR. We'll see you then. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work, because dreams only work if we do. Joe, thank you so much. Appreciate having you on.
Likewise, Arnette. Pleasure.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.